Hello and welcome to this edition of Reality Check Conversations. I'm Tanya Cervoni. Today I have with me Annette Cremo. Annette is the Chief Learning Officer at Strategic Consulting Partners, and she's someone that specializes in helping organizations build leadership bench strength. She's authored a number of publications on the topic, including her book with ATD called Developing a Leadership Pipeline. Annette, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited because what we're going to be talking about specifically today, we're going to talk about building a leadership pipeline, but with a focus on resilience, which is obviously a hot topic given the times that we've been living lately. So I thought we could start at the top, and that is, what do we mean when we say leadership resilience? How do we define that? And has that definition really changed in light of the pandemic?
Yeah, interesting. I think I'd like to start off by looking at resilience and then add in that leadership component of it. So if you look at the definition of resilience, according to Webster, it's the ability to discover, to recover from, or adjust to changes in our life, or to bounce back, to be able to recover quickly. And the APA defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, and aren't those things that we have experienced in the last year? And who knows where we're going from that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when it comes to leadership too, it's kind of interesting. We talk about developing our future leaders in the organization. And when you look at organizations and what they have done over the last 10 years, DDI did a study, a 2020 study, that said the bench strength dropped to an all-time low of only 11% in organizations. So it's telling me that organizations really are not preparing for the future. And we all know that, opportunity finds those who are prepared, and we just don't have it. And I think what we have looked at, that there is a changing nature in the workplace. There are new skills required. And definitely, as you said, resilience is one of those skills.
Yeah, it's definitely important. And I guess, I'm putting on my HR talent development hat and wondering, how do we select for that? How do we, identify folks that are resilient?
I think one thing we have to look at when you look at resilience is, what are some of the organizational drivers when it comes to picking people? So that's some of the guidelines that I use for developing or finding these folks. What are our drivers? What does success look like in the organization? And what do people need to do in order to be successful as a leader in the organization? And then the other thing that we look at in getting these folks is, once we sort of get a pool of individuals, we use a 360 assessment to build on their core competencies and to make sure we identify the areas that they need development in. And when we look at these with our cohorts, we find that there are pockets of information that people do need. And that's how we start developing the program. So all of our leadership development programs or emerging leader programs are all different depending on what the organization requires. And so we have to know the skills we're looking for. And then we also have to know who we're looking for. Are they excited about working in the organization? Do they have the skills? Do they have the knowledge? And sort of looking at that as a whole, we develop people who would be appropriate for the program.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm just curious, over this period that, of a year, let's say, are you seeing an evolution in the type of assessment questions or 360 questions, or the way that organizations are looking at what's required to be a resilient leader then?
I think we put resilience into the program. So we'll look at what the organization's drivers are. So what are the organization's competencies and what are the behaviors or skills associated with them? And then we also look at the component of resilience. So sort of two different topics, but we integrate the resilience component into the training itself. So we teach people how they can, make sure that they are optimistic, make sure that they're taking care of themselves. Make sure that they have that component of emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is so important when it comes to resilience. Knowing yourself, knowing others, knowing how to communicate with people is just so important.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, I guess, into the million-dollar question in terms of how do you build resilience? What are those key components? You've identified a couple, because, and one of the things too, I'll throw in there, is some people question whether it's possible to develop. So if you're not naturally optimistic, for example, is that something that you can develop? So I'd love to hear about what works, what are the strategies, and what are those components?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When we teach these things, and you know what, you said, ask a good question about, can they be developed? And yes, they can. So we talk about, yes, so it is possible. I have sort of 6 drivers for resilience. One is being optimistic. The second one is knowledge. And this is where that component of the Emerging Leader Program comes in. So it's knowledge about what's expected of me and can I do it? Can I do that job? And giving those folks confidence in doing the job that they have to do. The third component is mindfulness, being there, understanding yourself, being in the moment. My fourth component is building your self-esteem, valuing yourself, making sure that that self-talk that we have is not destructive. It builds us up instead. Fifth component, I say, take care of yourself. Make sure you understand you take care of your body and take care of your mind. And then the last thing, which is so important when it comes to resilience and for leadership, is positive relationships. Making sure that we keep those relationships, we develop those relationships. And with that comes all the other skills that we talk about: communication and listening and emotional intelligence.
I absolutely love that. And one of the things I love in hearing that is I think in days gone by, we might have sort of separated some of those skills as being things we don't necessarily address in the context of the corporate arena. So it sounds like we're really addressing the whole person, to use a bit of a cliche, but it must be really transformational because we're getting to the core of who we are, how we think, like how we're talking to ourselves. You must see amazing ahas and people changing, not only in terms of how they show up at work, but how they show up in their life in all aspects. Would that be true?
Absolutely. We see them change themselves, but we also see something interesting where they start changing other people. Because, by the way, when you are optimistic, it naturally transfers to another person. It's sort of like you get what you give.
Yeah, and they say that you can't give away what you don't have, right? So we're supposed to be these inspiring leaders that are motivated, but if we're struggling with our own self-worth or optimism, then how can you possibly shine the light for others? So I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So in terms of, is there a for folks listening, is there any sort of priority in how you sequence these types of topics? If someone wanted to start and hit the ground running, rather, is there a starting place for this?
Yeah. In the Emerging Leader Program, what I would do is to talk to your senior leadership and see what the core competencies and skills are of the organization, and then develop an assessment to quickly assess what is the current state. So you're looking for that gap. And when you find that gap, those are the organizational things you need to focus on training on, right? So give them that information. But also, as they're doing it, you also have to talk about, and I integrate some of the concepts of resilience in here. For example, knowing your mindset. Do you have that fixed mindset that assumes that intelligence, we are given sort of a certain intelligence when we're born and it's very static and I can't do anything about it? Or do we want to adapt that growth mindset that thrives on challenge and sees failure not as evidence of a lack of intelligence, but as a foundation for our growth? So you want to think about putting that in. People say they have a trouble maybe with communication. How does all this figure into why you're challenged with communication? And also put that emotional intelligence component into it as well. So we sort of integrate it into each one of the skill building sessions that we have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The last thing I was thinking about here, in terms of, again, for the folks who are listening, any anticipated obstacles or frequent obstacles? I know in the past, for example, I've had some organizations from a culture perspective not wanting to go down the path of, like, they saw mindfulness as sort of a little bit woohoo or whatever. I think we've entered a different era, but is there anything that you come up against when it comes to rolling out some of these topics?
Not the topics itself, it's more of buying into the program itself and having the commitment of the organization and the organizational leaders to take this chance on people who they are not managers or not supervisors. These are people who have the potential of being the future of the organization, because it does take time and it does take commitment. the other thing that I really like to put into the program is mentoring. I think that
Mm.
has been so important for the participants in the programs that we have done, where they not only have their 360, they have their supervisors making sure they work through their individual development plans, but they also have somebody from another department. So they get to know the organization and they could bounce these other ideas off of them. And sometimes the mentors see really a lot of skills and opportunities within these folks that they don't see themselves. So I
Yeah.
think, making sure we have the organization's buy-in, making sure there's commitment to the program, and that the senior leadership also is aware of what's going on with the participants. And I think, we're just getting finished one right now. And it was just amazing the transformation that I saw between the first day that these folks got together and when they finally did a final presentation. We have a capstone project that we do with them where we teach them problem solving skills, and then they go out in the organization and they find a problem or an issue that they can address in the organization and work through it. So they look at what is the problem, what are the causes, what are some of the solutions we can come up with, and they actually decide on a solution and develop an implementation plan. And when they presented this to the senior leadership, every one of their suggestions were accepted by them, and they are now going to go on to the next phase of implementing these solutions in the organization. So in that way, really the senior leadership really empowered them to take the next step in their leadership journey.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That must have had huge implications, not only on the engagement level of the participants, but also probably some really great innovative ideas for the organization. So,
Sure did. A lot of innovative money saving solutions for the organization.
oh wow, yeah, we definitely need more of those right now. A lot
That's
of
right.
a lot
You
of
got
talk
it.
about innovation, agility, better decision making, and creativity. So that's fantastic. That's
Mhm.
really great. So before I close off the session, any final thoughts or words of wisdom? Because I've got a question that's completely unrelated for you.
I don't know, words of wisdom. Just have the courage to keep on going with this. I know the programs that we undertook took, literally years for people to realize. So I mean, what we had to do was sit down with the senior leadership and look at taking them through what is the organization, the past organization, and what do we need in the future, and what skills do we need, and have them realize that we're not really developing those skills, and we need to do this if we're going to be sustainable and go ahead.
That makes a lot of sense. It always starts there from the top, getting buy-in. So thank you for that. So taking it in a different direction, and just to end this on an optimistic note, I would love to know personally, what are you most looking forward to as we come out of this pandemic?
Oh, I'll tell you one thing. I have 8 kids and I haven't seen 6 of them in over a year. So I'm
Oh,
looking forward, first of all, I could cry, to giving them all a hug and a kiss. And I have 14 grandchildren. So again, I'm going to give them all a hug and a kiss, but we are going to Disney in December. So I'm really excited to celebrate with Mickey 50th anniversary.
oh my God, that's wonderful. I can picture it. Yes, there's so much. That's the one good thing. There's the little things and the big things are going to just, we will not take them for granted, hopefully.
Never again.
Ever
Never.
again, right? Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you for all of your insights and being with us today. Really, really appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And this concludes this edition of Reality Check Conversations. If you have enjoyed this, please make sure you share this video with colleagues and friends, and feel free to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss a future conversation. Thank you so much for watching.